Well, I've had to listen to this a few times, and the more I listen to it, the more fucking stupid the man sounds. This is Femi, by the way. If you've not heard of him, he is a person who's based his career on emotions and bullshit, and he's done quite well at it. And he's one of these people that wanted to remain part of the EU. Now, listen to his little fucking argument here of why it was all wrong, and we'll unpack it as we go.
If you already understand why Brexit was one of the most undemocratic things to ever happen to the UK, keep scrolling. You don't need me to tell you this again.
Basically, if you don't understand how democracy works, crack on, be on your way. I've brainwashed you. If you're a Remainer and you wanted to stay part of the EU and you're a bit sour and you don't understand that it's not all about your feelings and there are other people with a brain on their shoulder, crack on, be on your way. I'm going to try and talk to those people that actually knew what they're on about and see if I can brainwash them again.
But if you're still here, are Brexiteers happy? Or did Boris Johnson call his own Brexit deal unfair? Did Nigel Farage say that Brexit has failed? Did one of the MEPs of the Brexit party actually try to go to the Supreme Court to officially declare that Brexit is worse than remaining in the EU?
So let's just have a quick look at that. Did Boris Johnson say that the deal that the EU are trying to give us isn't good? Probably. Did Nigel Farage say that there's been a lot of shit fuckery gone on within the negotiations and that they've been less than honourable in many places and that there's trying to be a lot of, well, pulling the wool over our eyes and giving us an absolute wanky deal? Did he say that? I think he probably did. And some other person going to the Supreme Court. Here's the thing. Do you know how many people that originally, when we were going to the part of having a referendum, it didn't matter whether it was Conservative or Labour, right? So many of them were Remainers. So many of them were bought and paid for, and so many of them did the fear thing, right? We were told that our entire country would almost slip into the sea should we leave. We were going to do badly financially. We were going to lose the rights to do all these different things, and it would be biblically bad. And here we are still, and we've come out of it better in many places, right? But the one thing we have still got is the right to do what we want with our own country, which, should we have stayed part of the European Union, they had a super state planned where all countries within the European Union would lose their sovereignty and their sovereignty would go straight to the European Union, where our banking systems would be taken over to Europe, where, say, for instance, the House of Commons, that would be a place that you could go as a tourist thing because there'd be no longer the debating there. It would go over there. Now, many of us on the Leave side worked this out. And on the night, even after all the fear and all the rest of it, we voted to leave. And these people will never get over that. And yeah, there's been a lot of shit fuckery since, but I'm still happier that we're out because we fucked up the European Union's super state plan to have a European army and to be a thorough dictatorship where we all had the same currency and we were all literally steamrolled by a few fucking wankers in Europe.
The EU. But how could that happen if Brexit is supposedly the will of the people?
You dumb fuck, it was the will of the people. That's why they voted that way. What part of this can you not get, you flat-line moron?
It's because Brexit, unlike what most Brexiteers believed, is about
And you know what most Brexiteers believed?
international relations. It's about our relationship with the EU. And international relations runs on treaties, which can be up to thousands of pages long, so there are thousands of ways that any individual country could have another relationship with another.
He doesn't get the fact that we actually wanted to end many of those treaties. We didn't like them. They weren't good for us. We were trying to cut all of that shit and fuck it off. And then you start to negotiate from a position of power. I mean, what part of that can he not get?
Another individual country. And yet when it came to our relationship with the EU, we were given two boxes to tick.
That's right, stay or leave. Maybe he's getting it, but I still don't think he is, do you?
One said remain, so keep things as they are with the treaties that established the European Union. The other said leave, which meant literally any other relationship with the European.
No, a new relationship that we would negotiate, that would be in our favour, where we actually took back control of many of our things, which is what we should have done, okay? And we should never have given them over in the first place, seeing as this is not how it started. And after that, say, for instance, we take back control of our stuff, and then we can go, here's what I want, and they say, here's what we want, and then we meet in the middle rather than being dictated to. Do you see how this works? You're not used to that. Oh, you're a socialist. You believe in dictating, don't you?
Union. So while the 16 million people who voted Remain all voted for the same specific treaty,
that's a bit arrogant. To assume he knew what 16 million people all thought is fairly arrogant, all right? But, you know, let him think what he likes.
The 17 million people who voted Leave could have had 17 million different alternative relationships in mind.
So 17 million Leave people all decided that the Brexit Leave campaign, once we decided we left, right, the negotiations would all work so that they, each person of that 17 million, would get exactly what they wanted. Nobody was that fucking naive. Nobody was that stupid. What we did is we realized that we didn't like the bloc and we wanted to leave. And we had to have whatever came after that was going to be better than what they had in plan. That's what we thought. We didn't see the future. We didn't know exactly what we were going to get. And quite frankly, we accepted that when we left. Okay? But we had the minerals to leave. Whereas you wanted to hold on to the coattails of the European Union because you thought we were better off that way. After the way they treated us, can you actually say, hand on heart, that you liked the way they treated us and that they treated us fairly and all the rest of it? Or could you see, but I doubt it, that they were dirty, underhanded, scheming little bastards that didn't actually shoot straight once?
So a majority in favour of leave does not guarantee that there's a majority of the country in favour of any specific alternative relationship with the EU.
Right. So a majority that leave didn't have a majority deciding they were all. So what he's trying to say is the ones that decided to leave, unless they all thought the same, their vote was wrong or something like that. Let's have that again. You know,
Relationships in mind. So a majority in favour of leave does not guarantee that there's a majority of the country in favour of any specific alternative relationship.
that's total gas, right? So the majority that decided to remain, did they know the plans for the future? No. They just decided they were going to remain. The ones that decided to leave didn't know the future, but accepted the fact that they didn't know the future, but they decided that that was going to be better and that whatever we got from that was going to be better. So what he's going to say is because there was not a majority that we all thought like the same fucking sheep, that therefore we were wrong and that couldn't work. Ugh.
Relationship with the EU to the one that we had before. That's why some people have argued that the referendum should have required more than 50%.
Right. It does require more than 51%, or 50.1 to be precise. There has to be a majority. 50% against 50% is a draw, isn't it? Where am I going wrong here? So they want a supermajority. Here's the thing. From my understanding is, if they said it had to be 60%, right? If he'd have said 60% now, right, it wouldn't be good enough, because if we'd reached 60%, they'd need to be 70. And if we reached 70, it would have had to have been 80. It would never be good enough. The only result good enough for people like this would have been we lost and they won. And they would have gloated. And they'd have said we knew nothing and all the rest of it. And it didn't matter. Say, for instance, we stayed in the EU and it had gone to shit and we'd have had the super state. We'd have lost our sovereignty. We'd have had the one currency. We'd have had to get rid of all our flags. We'd have had to accept every other thing going, okay, including the one European army, right? All of this, right, including our banks being taken over, our central banks being taken over there, along with our politics being decided over there, not here, all of that lot. If that lot had happened, people like him would have been fine with it. But people like me who believe in, I live on a fucking island and we should dictate to ourselves or at least run our own fucking policing and how we're going to work and how everything else happens, right? You're never going to get that. I just don't get it.
I.e. a supermajority to vote for leave in order to show that the old relationship with the EU was so unpopular that any new relationship would have been more popular by default. So this commenter saying it's hypocritical to argue for a fair voting system if you ever suggested that Brexit should have required a supermajority.
It's hypocritical to vote for a fair, how we claim everyone should have equal vote, but also claim that Brexit should have required a supermajority. You can't actually argue with what that guy's saying. And yet Femi has tried to make a case for that. And regardless of all his word salad, right, what he's saying is unless we could all prove on our side that we were all literally singing off the same hymn sheet, then the vote doesn't count. You don't get to decide that. Fucking hell. How does anybody take this moron fucking seriously? Well, anyway, that's him finished, basically. And
doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. If you already...
doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. What a weapon. Unbelievable. Oh, mate. Oh, well, I'm going live in not very long, but this bloke is an absolute biblical cunt, honestly. And I'd love to see him at the dispatch box up against, say, for instance, the old guard. If we could actually, can you imagine him in a room with somebody like Christopher Hitchens? That would have been a very, very well, it depends on which mood Hitchens was in. Hitchens could have drawn out the slaughter or could have ended him quickly. And you would have probably found was he would have got emotional and called him names, or you're racist, or you're whatever. Anyway, I'm done. Just I can't believe the biblical, and they're still harping on about it. These cunts will go to their grave saying that Brexit was wrong. Fucking idiots.